Yes, friends, we'll discuss today about performance of contract, which is an extension or the next unit as far as Contract Act is concerned. Uh, Once we have established the basic ingredients of the contract, that is offer, acceptance, then agreement takes place, and if that agreement is supported by law, contract takes place, agreed. But then we have also read or understood the concepts of essential elements of contracts like capacity to contract. Then we went on to understand free consent and things like that. So having done all those things, the next stage is about performing the contract or executing the contract. So let us see what are the important points as regards performance of contract. Obligations of the parties to the contract. Whoever are the parties to the contract, they have certain mutual obligations to perform. First one, parties to the contract must perform or offer to perform their respective share of promises unless dispensed or excused by law, whether it is out of contract or Contract Act or any other act. What do you mean by this? So basically, if a contract has to move forward, the promisor and the promisee have to respectively perform their share or offer to perform their share of obligations. That is why I say contract must be parties to the contract, that is promisor and the promisee should perform or offer to perform. Offer to perform means tendering of performances, attempting to perform, willing to perform. Actual performance and tendered performance is the discussion which I will do it in a short while. As of now, what you understand is either there should be a performance or there should be an attempt of performance by both the parties to the contract. If and when both the parties actually perform, then the contract is said to be discharged, the contract is said to have been completed. However, what we understand here is perform or offer to perform their respective share of promises unless and until dispensed with. That means the performance is being waived off, or for that matter, dispense means it need not be done. So unless and until the performance is dispensed with or waived off by the other party, the performance have to be either offered to perform or attempted to be performed. Only then we can say there is a performance of obligation of one of the parties, of both the parties involved. If both the parties continue their performance and finish their obligations, then of course the contract ends there. Having said that, we have another point where if it is excused by the law, that is obligation of performance, if it is excused by the law, whether it is a Contract Act exclusion or if it is excused by any other law for the time being in force, then also we say that performance is taken care of. So in simple words, both the parties should perform or offer to perform until and unless it is dispensed with or waived off by the other party, or if it is excused by the law for the time being in force. So the first point was about both the parties executing their obligations. The contract creates a legal obligation to perform which will exist until discharge, and the best way to discharge is to perform. So what do you mean by the second point? There is a legal obligation which is created by the contract. It is not just an obligation, it is a legal obligation which is to perform, which will exist until discharge. Means the contract will not come to an end, the contract will not be discharged until the performance is pending from both the parties. When both the parties complete their respective obligations, the contract gets discharged. So it says obligation to perform will exist until discharged, and the best way to discharge is by performing it. The best way to complete the contract is by actually performing the obligations. Now, third point, basic rule is that a promisor must perform exactly what he promised, and it is absolute. So let's say a promisor has told he will perform ABCD things. He has to perform ABCD things. He cannot go and say, let me perform XYZ and things like that. So whatever the promisor has promised, he should perform the same, and it is absolute and unconditional. He has to complete whatever he has promised in the contract. Next, if performed or offered to perform his share of promise, he can enforce on the other party to perform and will be absolved from the responsibilities governed by the provisions of the law. What is the fourth point telling? Fourth point says that uh, uh, if it is performed or offered to perform his share of promise, he can enforce the other party to perform. That means, let's say I have to perform, let's say, A, B, C, D things. I have performed A, B, C, D things, or attempted to perform A, B, C, D things. Having done that, I can enforce the other party to perform his share of obligations, and I also get absolved from the responsibilities governed by the provisions of law. What does this mean? I can get absolved means I will be safeguarded, I will be protected in case the other party is not going to perform or he refuses to perform, with all the provisions that are available under breach of contract and remedies for breach of contract. For example, if I performed ABCD things or attempted to perform ABCD things and the other party has refused to perform his share of obligation, yes, then it leads to something called breach of contract. Once it is a breach of contract, then we can claim damages, ordinary damages, punitive damages, special damages. Then we can go for injunction and other facilities like a specific performance of a contract, what are all available benefits which is given under the remedies to breach of contract chapter will come into play here. So he cannot, the other party cannot file a case on me for breach. I will be having the right to file a case, and I will definitely be absolved from the responsibilities because I have either performed or attempted to perform my share of obligations. Are we clear on this, friends? Yes. Moving forward, performance could be either actual performance or attempted or tendered performance. This is what I've been telling again and again. Either it is a past tense, that is, it is performed already, or attempted to perform, and I'm ready and willing to perform, basically executory in nature. Whatever may be it, the performance can be classified into actual or attempted / tendered performance. Tendered and attempted performance means one and the same. Let's see an example. If P promises to deliver certain goods to R and take them to the appointed place during the business hours, but if R refuses to take delivery, then it is clearly an attempted performance, because here Mr. P has done everything possible, taking the goods, going to the appointed place, and that too in business hours. What else could he do to deliver these goods? That is his share of obligations. Having done that, Mr. R has refused to take the delivery of the goods. Therefore, we can say Mr. P has attempted his performance. So here is an example of attempted performance. Next example, Mr. X borrows rupees 5 lakhs from Mr. Y to be repaid after 1 month, and Mr. X has in fact repaid on the due date. Then it's called actual performance. So the obligation from today till the end of 31st today or 30th today, as the case may be, is he is yet to perform his obligation of repayment of the loan. On the 30th day or 31st day, let's say at the end of the month, he is in fact repaid, then we have to call it as actual performance. Well, before that, if let's say on the 20th day, he goes and ready and willing to repay, but if the other party who has lent the money says, no, I have given time to you till the end of the month, I will wait and then collect, then definitely we can say that Mr. X, who had borrowed the money, has attempted the performance. Thereafter, on the 30th day, that is at the end of the month, he need not go again and tender his performance to repay the amount. It will be the obligation of the person who gave the money, who lent the money, to ask for the money. So that's the critical point that we are trying to understand here about performance and tendered performance and the respective provisions around it. So I hope you understood the example given. Moving forward, by whom the contract may be performed. Quite simple. If the nature of the contract has an intention that the promisor should perform, then only the promisor should perform. That is, in case of personal contract cases, or where personal skill is involved, or where confidence of personal nature is getting involved between the parties, then only the promisor should perform, nobody else should perform. Having said that, the second point clarifies the position which says, in other cases, the promisor or his representatives may employ a competent person to perform if the contract is of general nature. For example, here, painting of a picture, let's say it's an art-based picture, and I believe that person has a tremendous amount of hidden talent, or his talent is known to the world, then I have some personal confidence on him. I am giving this contract because he is painting on, not anybody else. So in such cases, only he has to perform and not any other authorized person. Well, in the other case, let's say, for example, promise to pay money, it is a general contract. If I have promised to pay money to Mr. X, and eventually, let's say I was not able to pay it, if my brother pays it to Mr. X, it doesn't matter. Eventually X has got his money, so it could be made by, the promise could be, the obligation to perform the promise could be made by the promisor himself or his representatives, or who has been authorized by his representative. That is, even a third party could make the payment here. Question of personal skill does not get involved here. Therefore, very clearly it's of general nature, and therefore any third person can also perform the same. Are we clear on these points? Yes. Let's go further into understanding. Promise under a contract may be performed based on circumstances. It's just a matter of extension of whatever we have understood. Let's say if they ask you a short note question on who can perform, then probably you can write these 5 points. First point, the promise can be performed by the promisor himself. That is, if the intention of the contract is very clear that only the promisor should perform, such promise must be performed by the promisor, as I have already explained here. So point B clarifies the position. These are contracts which involves exercise of a personal skill, diligence, or based on personal confidence between the parties to the contract. So when the bondage is very clear that, or when the contract is very, very clear that I am giving this contract because of your personal skill involved, because I have only personal confidence in you and no one else, then only such person has to perform. It cannot be done by a third person. Example I've already covered with respect to, let's say, art painting. I've covered it here somewhere. Whenever there is painting of a picture, I have confidence only that this person can paint such a pictures. In such a case, only such person can paint it and no one else. Yes, and in case, second point, here it can be performed by the agent. What it is, it's simple. When point 1A or B is not involved, that means when personal skill, diligence, personal confidence is not getting involved. In simple words, if it is of a general nature, then the promisor or his representatives may employ a competent person to perform, which is as same as what we discussed here. The third person, or third point, as to who can perform, the legal representatives of the deceased person can also be under an obligation to perform. Let's see what it is. If a contract is about point 1, that is where personal skill, diligence, or personal confidence is involved, then it comes to an end. Observe it, it comes to an end with the death of the promisor. Obviously, you can't ask the legal representative to do a painting what the father could have done. So, if a contract is about point 1 above, it comes to an end on the death of the promisor, and you can't ask the legal representative to perform the obligation involved in the contract. Whereas, in other cases, the legal representatives of the deceased are bound to perform unless there is a contrary intention appearing in it. So, whenever we have drafted the contracts or probably rental agreements or property transactions, or for that matter any other contract, we would mention that so and so called residing at so and so place, aged about so and so, and includes all his successors, legal representatives, etc., etc. That means if that person dies, his legal representatives will be under an obligation to perform the contract. So if the contract is not having a contrary intention, then legal representatives shall be obliged or shall be under the obligation to perform the whatever balance contract obligations were there. So very clearly, in other cases, the legal representatives of the deceased are bound to perform unless there is a contrary intention. If in the contract it appears that very clearly that the legal representatives should not get involved in it, or the successor should not get involved in it by way of certain clauses, then only the legal representatives will not be bound to perform the obligation. Having said that, by and large, most of the contract includes the legal representatives because there is benefits to be derived out of the contract and there are obligations to be performed out of the contract. Moving further, as the last point of legal representatives liability is in a contract is limited to the value of the property inherited, which is fair enough. So whenever the contract has to be obligated to be performed by the legal representatives, whatever benefit that the legal representatives is getting out of the contract, the liability is limited to such benefit. In technical words, we have written it as property inherited. Let's say in a contract there is a benefit which the legal representative is supposed to get for about, let's say, 10 lakh rupees in a contract of sale of goods. Now, legal representative is under an obligation to deliver the goods and receive the payment of 10 lakh rupees. Let's say if the obligation was not met and the liability was about 20 lakhs, the liability to the legal representative shall be restricted to the extent of only rupees 10 lakhs and not 20 lakhs, because whatever property inherited in the form of goods is only valued at 10 lakhs. Are we clear on this point? Yes. Going forward, that is the fourth point, third persons can also perform the contract. Let us see what it is. When a promisee accepts performance from third parties, he cannot afford or he cannot afterwards enforce it against the promisor. So either the promisor can perform it or a third person can perform it, but if the promisee has accepted the performance from third person, thereafter he cannot afterwards enforce the promise against the promisor. So let's say A had to deliver 10 units of a particular product, then to B. Let's say C has delivered the same 10 units to B, which B has accepted without objecting, even though C was a third party. Later on, B cannot go and ask A, no, I wanted you to perform, I will not accept what the performance is tendered by C. Having already accepted, he can't take such a stand. He can't file a case against A for not delivering the 10 units by himself, because the fact is that is B has already accepted the delivery of 10 units from C. Are we clear with this example? Yes. It is a case of performance by a stranger, and if promisee accepts, it results in discharging the promiser. That's what I said. You can't catch hold of A now, that is B can't catch hold of A, although the promisor may or may not have authorized or ratified the act of the third party. In this example, it is irrelevant whether A has agreed for C to deliver it to B or not. So if C has delivered it on behalf of A to B and B has accepted it, automatically A gets discharged out of the contract. He will not be liable for any acts done thereafter. That means legal action cannot be taken by B. Sir, having said that, what should B do then? It's up to him. Either he can refuse to take delivery from C and insist only A to deliver it. In such a case, only A has to deliver. But if he has accepted the delivery from C, then nothing much could be done. B has got what he has to get, and therefore the contract gets discharged. That is, the promisor himself gets discharged. B will be obligated to perform his share of promise, that is, paying the money. Whether he pays to C or A now becomes a question mark. It's a different side of the story. Now, if C accepts the payment and delivers it back to A, then there ends the point. Or if A accepts it from B directly, then also there ends the point. What if C accepts the payment from B and does not deliver it to A. In such a case, it is a problem between A and C. C, being an agent who has performed, is obligated to make the payment back to A. Are we clear on this? Similarly, if let's say B has made the payment to C by accepting the delivery from a third person, A has not received the funds from C yet. Can A file a case on B? Not possible, because A clearly had an option to stop C from delivering to B. His authorization or ratification is irrelevant here. Obligation of B to make the payment is completed. Obligation of A to deliver the goods through C is completed, which means the contract is discharged. It is only between A and C to fight out for receiving the funds. C is legally under an obligation to repay the money back to A, as he has received it on behalf of A, that is, as an agent of A. Are we clear on these things? Yes. Moving forward, last point, pretty interesting. Joint promisors. That is, promise can be performed, promise under a contract can be performed by the joint promisors in such a situation when two or more persons have made a joint promise. Unless there is a contrary intention in the contract, all the persons must jointly fulfill the promise. What does it mean? When, let's say, A, B and C, I have given it as an example here, A, B and C jointly promises to pay rupees 6 lakhs to D, all three have to jointly perform unless there is a contrary intention appearing in the contract. Let's say if one of the clauses says C is not under an obligation to pay, though he is promised to pay, then only A and B is obligated to pay. Therefore, we have to check the intention of the contract. If there is no contrary intention, then it is straightforward. A, B and C, all three have to perform their share of obligations to pay rupees 6 lakhs to D. In continuation of it, if anyone dies, then his legal representatives along with the survivor promisors should fulfill the promise. In the example here, if in case A dies, his legal representatives along with B and C, who are the survivor promisors, should perform the promise. As simple as that. So if A dies, his legal representatives plus B and C, who are the survivor promisors, should perform the joint obligation and pay rupees 6 lakhs to D. Going forward, if all die, that is A, B and C, if all of them dies, then all the legal representatives must fulfill their joint promise, because the legal representatives comes into the shoe of the main promisors. If all dies, then all the legal representatives, check this, if all A, B and C dies, then legal representatives of A, B and C respectively should perform the promise jointly. So these were the initial discussions about performance of a contract. We will continue further in our next sessions as far as performance of contract is concerned. As of this session, if you have any doubts, please do mail me your doubts to rohitacademy@gmail.com. I will revert back to you. Thank you very much.